everyone, and good afternoon. This is our last panel of today on the investment area in digital health. Before we start, let's see how many of you in the room are thinking about raising funds or are raising funds today for your companies. Okay, not bad. So hopefully you'll find some useful information today listening to our panelists. I want to introduce our esteemed panelists before we start the discussion. I start with myself. My name is Narges Bani Asadi. I'm the Vice President of Informatics in Roche sequencing business. Before that, I was a researcher at Stanford and UC Berkeley and started a company called Bani to accelerate the science of personalized medicine through building distributed software systems and machine learning for genomic analysis. And sold my company to Roche about 2 years ago. And now we are building a clinical version of our product. So in Roche sequencing, our vision is to build end-to-end sequencing solution for clinical applications. So our panelists today bring a lot of experience and knowledge in the healthcare and digital health field to the panel. I start from our right, Amanda. So Amanda is joining us from Illumina. Today she's co-founder and head of Illumina Accelerator program, which is the venture vehicle of the company as well as engine of creating new companies that are using genomics. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us. Before that, she also has worked in Alexandria Ventures, so she brings a lot of experience in analyzing the digital health market space and investment. She has a PhD in chemical biology from Caltech and a bachelor's in physical organic chemistry from University of Colorado Boulder. To her left, we have Iana Dimkova. She comes from GE, and she's a director of healthcare investment at GE Ventures today. Iana has a lot of experience in leadership, both in operational as well as investment in the healthcare area. She has been part of initial team in Procure treatment centers, where they were building nationwide network for advanced care therapies. She has also been an associate with Alvarez & Marsal, a private investment company. Iana holds a BA and MBA from Columbia University. Thank you, Iana, for joining us. And to my right, we have Don Ross, who is representing angel investment in life sciences and earlier stages of investment in the field. He has more than 30 years of experience in the field, from authoring many publications, developing software. He has some textbooks in the field, and most recently, he's managing partner in digital health and board of directors at Life Sciences Angels. Welcome to our panelists. The introduction was very short. Their resumes are much longer, so feel free to Google them and learn about their background. So we have a couple of questions to discuss with our panelists today. The first one that I want to each of them to elaborate on is, what is their investment thesis in digital health? What are the trends that they are betting on? And can they share an exciting example in their portfolio with us today? Don, do you want to go first?
Sure. So really, in terms of a thesis in digital health, there's certain themes that have emerged. But first off, one thing that we certainly take a view of is that digital is going to be ubiquitous and everywhere. It's going to be in monitoring your knee replacement. It's going to be in maybe passively in recognizing you when you wake up in the morning. That is just part of the sensors in the house. That it really and truly will be everywhere. That said, really our focus is in the healthcare industry. And so that we're looking for companies that really have goals that really fit with the healthcare goals of really improving outcomes, improving patient experience, improving the clinician experience, and of course, lowering costs. We certainly are looking for things that do have some kind of a business model that's related to the healthcare system. In terms of overall trends, certainly in technology, the ubiquitous computing is a huge trend. There's also not only the data sources of wearables and IoT and that, but there's also the sources of being able to mine social media, other kinds of conversations, things in a more passive sense as well. So those are huge drivers. Certainly we've talked about genomics, big data, SaaS companies, and analytics, and then, of course, the trend of an aging population. A couple of companies that we've invested in, one in particular, I should mention is Numedi, which is big data analytics and drug discovery. And honest, I didn't know until I got here today to know that the next speaker is one of the founders. I hadn't looked at the agenda carefully. So that certainly is a very popular company in our portfolio. And we have about a dozen companies in the digital health space, and we invest across all sectors.
Great. So I think that G Ventures comes a little bit later in terms of the life cycle of a company. So we tend to spend about 70% of our time within the health IT space. The rest is really focused on non-invasive devices and procedures. Within health IT, we invest in anything from digital therapeutics to analytic solutions that are meant to align cost with quality. I think we're really seeking companies that enhance the patient and provider experience. In addition to really being very focused on helping the transition to value-based care while understanding that as of today, most of the world is still really fee-for-service. So we do need to see companies that try to straddle both until we're ready to make that transition. We are a later stage investor, so 2/3 of our rounds are Series B and later. Our check size is between $5 and $10 million, and that leads us to really look for startups that have achieved product market fit, have post-pilot revenue, and are really ready to scale their efforts. Within that, one of the most recent companies we closed is a company called Health Reveal, and they're focused on predictive analytics at the point of care. So it turns out that about 50% of chronic disease management is not well done. Physicians are overwhelmed. EHRs are not interconnected, so it's very difficult for a provider to be able to say what a patient who's being hospitalized 10 to 12 times a year has actually gone through and then recommend the appropriate course of care. So what Health Reveal does is it helps that provider to be better connected to the patient and to really recommend a course of treatment when he or she actually sees the patient.
Well, thanks, Narges, for having us, and thanks for the conference. It's my first time at TiEcon, so I'm excited to be here and learn more about the conference itself. So Illumina, as you may know, is a DNA sequencing company. So we are the leader in technologies that enable us to read DNA. And as sort of a corporate vehicle within Illumina, we're very focused in genomics. So by definition, everything that we're investing in is genomics applications. So Illumina Accelerator was created about 2.5 years ago to really partner with entrepreneurs to unlock the power of the genome to improve human health and beyond. And there's a lot of digital health aspects to what we invest in because our companies, our startups are generating a lot of data. So it's a common denominator with all of our companies is they're all working in downstream applications in genomics, and they're all generating terabases of data that require a lot of sort of analytics and analysis from that. So I guess that's kind of how we fit into the digital health space. But the types of companies that we work with, they're seed stage, so they could be companies of a team of 2 people all the way up to like 10 or 15 people in size where they've raised a few $1 million or less. That's usually where we can really help drive a lot of value for the entrepreneurs. We provide a 6-month funding cycle where we offer capital and access to capital through our partners. We have a $40 million match funding vehicle through one of our partners that will provide capital to the startups that raise qualified fundraising So that's really a fantastic resources for our companies. We give them access to our sequencing instruments, expertise, and technologies to enable them to generate a lot of data. We provide coaching, sort of how do you build a company from sort of raising a team to defining your go-to-market strategy to really developing your fundraising strategy, your business model. And then we have beautiful lab space here in the Bay Area for the companies. The types of companies, what they're working on are really downstream breakthrough applications in genomics, so that's pretty diverse. It could be a traditional therapeutics company. It could be a agriculture company. We actually have a number of companies that are in the agriculture space. It could be a synthetic biology company that are engineering organisms to produce specialty chemicals. It could be a diagnostics company. We have a couple of companies in that area. Or it could be a direct-to-consumer genomics startup. So it's pretty diverse, but all, again, kind of with that core theme of genomics application. So Illumina, our mission is to unlock the power of the genome, and so we have a few different ways that we try to partner with entrepreneurs to help us do that. Of course, we have a number of customers that are doing that we try to support through a customer relationship, but we also have a few venture sort of company creation vehicles. So Illumina Accelerator is one, which is this sort of 6-month funding cycle. We also have Illumina Ventures, which spun out of Illumina about a year ago, which is more of a independent venture capital fund that invests in the genomic space. And then we also have sort of this company spin-out or incubation platform where we've launched a couple of companies like Grail and Helix. So sort of this 3-prong approach with Illumina Accelerator, with Illumina Ventures, and with sort of this spin-out company creation vehicle. Those are sort of the ways we try to partner with entrepreneurs, again, sort of all in the realm of genomics.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing. I think it's a good segue to the next topic we want to discuss, which is the role of investors in helping the entrepreneurs tackling the challenges in front of them. You know, as a previous entrepreneur, I know how important it is to have smart money, or investors who are much more than the cash they provide, but also the guidance and the help they can provide in bringing people to the company, defining the business model, and really tackling the challenges in front of the entrepreneur. So as we were getting prepared for this panel, we had a discussion of what are the challenges in digital health for entrepreneurs. And we discussed several topics. One of them was the access to talent, of course. We need a lot of new talent to come to the field. We discussed about the regulatory challenges. We discussed about business models. And I thought the one that I think came up more, it is good to discuss today, was around how to make money. Because at the end, our investors need to show the business case of how this will be a profitable company to invest in. And we are talking about a new market, digital health, where you don't have a lot of examples companies to point to and say, okay, we are going to replace this company. We are going to do this better than this other competitor. We're talking about creating a new market, changing behaviors. And it is usually very challenging for entrepreneurs to be able to precisely map a business model and think about how it's going to become profitable. So we want to hear from our panelists how they are providing insight and help to these entrepreneurs as they think about reimbursement, business models, and basically bottom line, making money. Amanda, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can start. I guess, well, I'll start with this. There's a couple of different categories of companies that we at least work with. So you have sort of therapeutics or traditional drug discovery companies that are planning to go sort of through the FDA regulatory path and then sort of the standard reimbursement models. And so I think that engine is well understood. Now, of course, there's a lot of macro drivers that may change. But the FDA has been, in the past several years, a really fantastic partner and trying to kind of push drugs through that really do work for patients that are safe. So I think the therapeutics route for regulatory and reimbursement is pretty well understood, especially from sort of more traditional life science therapeutics investors who know how to invest and sort of help entrepreneurs through that space. So we do invest in that area, and I think that's something that's we're comfortable with. On the diagnostic space, I think that's an area that's pretty interesting. So even if you have a diagnostic test, say for a certain type of cancer, you may have that test and bring it to patients, and you may charge the patients, the doctors may prescribe it, but the payers may not pay for it, or Medicare may not have a code for it. And so that can be really challenging. But there are some it can be challenging, and there are only a handful of success stories in sort of traditional diagnostics companies that have gone through those paths and succeeded. So it's challenging, but there are some glimmers of hope. There are companies as an example, in one particular field, which is in the non-invasive prenatal testing space, which has had rapid adoption of a new technology, which basically enables you to obtain information about a fetus instead of doing a large invasive amniocentesis to determine if the fetus may have chromosomal abnormalities that could lead to birth defects. You can now sort of do that same test instead of with a long needle. You can do that with a blood draw from the mother and get that same information about the fetus. So that's a pretty new technology, a diagnostic, with a few different companies, Veronata, Arios, and a number of folks who have kind of paved that way. And the adoption of that technology by physicians, by patients, and now payers has been pretty remarkable. So that's a nice success story. But there are only a few in the diagnostic space. So I think that can be a challenge. But the non-invasive prenatal testing world has, I think, shown the power of patients and kind of asking their physician, saying, hey, my friend got the verified test, I want it too. I heard there's this non-invasive test, how do I get it? And payers are paying for it because, at least for the higher risk women, which is pregnant women over 35, the payers see the benefits for it. Right. We're hoping that they will also pay for sort of the tests that are for any pregnant woman. Yeah. But some payers are. So I think there are glimmers of hopes, but especially in the diagnostic space, the reimbursement path can be challenging for sure.
Thank you.
So I think it's really hard. There's just been so much excitement around digital health, and unfortunately, sort of the promises that were made, and which actually led to a lot of talent pouring into the field, haven't necessarily been delivered upon. And so what we're seeing is a lot of companies that were very successful in raising large rounds, especially in 2014, 2015, and now coming back and never really necessarily having proven market fit. So we sort of, again, we sit a little bit later, so most of the companies that we end up working with and investing in are trying to scale their solutions. But even there, the challenges we're facing is that providers there's a little bit of fatigue around analytic solutions, right? They just have all of these point solutions. Their CTOs are angry. They don't want to maintain them. They're hard to maintain. There's no really economic benefit that has been proven. So the ROIs are sort of all over the place. And so it's just been really challenging. And so I think that what we look for are companies that sort of understand that or have the right teams that actually have a good mix of a healthcare background and obviously tech in order to make sure that the product is good, but that they have the connections and they can leverage our platform, which is we are in basically most providers in the US. So we have somebody whose sole job is to actually make those introductions. We have a lot of connections on the payer side. Obviously, we're a self-insured employer with 320,000 people. So we have a platform, and we think we can be very helpful. But again, it's just been a struggle for a lot of companies to be able to demonstrate value because of all the things that we know about, including really long sales cycles and just encountering a heavy regulated system that's not necessarily clear in how you can show value. So I think that things are changing and things are going to get better, and the ones that have actually proven value will only accelerate in their development. But I'm hopeful that as that progression takes place, it gives even more room for some of these companies to sort of grow and scale.
Thank you, Iana. I think it really takes collaboration between different institutions. Today I read that FDA started a digital health department. And one of the goals they mentioned is that how to help companies to get to the validation that they need and value for digital health portfolio. So hopefully that helps.
Not sure I would rely on the FDA for that, but as you can tell, it's a broad topic area. So I'm going to try to focus on a couple of specific areas, and which will build on the previous responses here. Is really some of the lean launchpad or lean business principles really do apply in healthcare. And the very first one is to get out of the building and talk to the customers, and really understanding what that customer pain point is and how you're going to go about solving it, and then really having the data to back that up. And one of the things in healthcare is that, as was pointed out, is just because you can deliver value doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to pay for it. And one area that is, I think, a huge opportunity area is mental health. It's something that's really is underserved across the nation. I think there's a lot of potential in that area. But there's also, if you look at mental health, there was a company that we looked at recently that had a really, really interesting solution for identifying people with mild to moderate depression. And being able to then get treatment and get them into the system for getting better treatments. It can definitely show that if you can treat depression, you have lower healthcare costs. What that solution didn't pay attention to is the fact that the hospitals already, the clinicians are overburdened. They can't service their existing population. And once you identify additional patients, they have a liability to treat. So their solution actually makes their problem worse. So the real problem was that they're under-resourced to be able to treat the population, and so there needed to be a turnkey solution that not only identified people that needed treatment, but also provided the treatment, whether it was a peer-to-peer, whether it was computer-based, whether it was clinician groups that they had allied with, but really getting out there and knowing the customer, understanding the customer's problem, and then having some validation around that. It really, an early stage in digital health, most companies, it's about market risk, not product risk. So that's a really key area to spend time on and focus on.
Thank you, Don. Very, very good comments. So we have some time left. I think it's good to open it to the audience and see what are the questions about investment in digital health.
Just curious about the changes from the governance point of view and the impact on healthcare, right? Obamacare, no Obamacare, and the way in which the investments are being deployed. Is it consistent or is it still not consistent? Just wanted to get some view from.
I can speak quickly, let others go. Frankly, from my position, the core issues in healthcare, I think value-based care is a movement that is unstoppable. And so following the initial goals that I was talking about of lowering costs, improving care, improving patient experience, and improving clinician experience, if you're touching those points, you've really got the basis of a business, and it isn't really going to matter who's in the White House.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I think one area where you will see changes, where companies that are trying to address it are going to face some challenges, is sort of in the Medicaid population, just because it's unclear what states will do now that if Medicaid is indeed, if the funding going to that population is reduced. And that could be on the plan side, that can be on the chronic disease management side, but that's one area that I would watch closely, and there's a bit of uncertainty that we're here in the market.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would say about the political landscape is around NIH funding, because I think that's so important, especially for sort of fundamental scientific discovery that then will make it to patients. Over time. That I think it's one bit of encouraging thing is that the budget that just went through, although it's sort of an interim budget, did include a significant increase in NIH funding. So I think it does show bipartisan support for the world that we live in terms of innovation in healthcare. So that's encouraging that the budget was increased by $2 billion for this past approval that just went through last week. So that's encouraging. I think also the budget included an increase to the Obama precision, well, I guess we're not probably calling it Obama anymore, the Precision Medicine Initiative, which is also great because I think people are understanding the power of sort of doing population scale genomics analysis and genetic information analysis. So there are some things that I think hopefully Congress will continue to push and have a bipartisan view on this industry.
Just a quick follow on the NIH funding is that for a number of years it's been a lot more difficult than it used to be. And we've oftentimes have encouraged companies to look to see whether or not there's a application of their technology that's applicable for the Department of Defense, because there's been more funds more readily available out of the DoD.
Thank you. More questions?
Yeah, this is a question specifically for Don. Could you say something about the business model of your organization, the Life Science Angels? And then secondly, it seems like the history of the organization is more with medical devices and such. And how many of the advisors that you have there are specifically focused on health IT? Yeah.
Sure. So we are an angel group. So we have the members make their own individual decisions. We have over 150 members in the group. In the Life Science Angels was started in about 2005, I believe. In that time period, members have invested in the $40–50 million neighborhood in aggregate, and the follow-on, we have quite a good reputation. The follow-on investments have been about $800 million. We have about a dozen companies that, digital health loosely defined, but we have about a dozen companies in the space. In addition to Numedi, we have Mindshare Medical in the radiology space. We also have a couple of companies early on that we invested and had exits in. One was in a wearable sensors area, and the other one had to do, interestingly enough, was biometric measurements with TV ads. It was purchased by Nielsen. So it is something that we're active in the space. We do, as you're right, we do have our roots are in really more in the devices and diagnostics and therapeutics, but we have a significant contingent. I don't know exactly the numbers that are specifically interested in digital health, and that's one of the things that I'm leading the charge with. We have a partnership with Launchpad Digital Health out of San Francisco. And in any of our screening meetings, we do combine digital health and devices, but it's a reflection of interest is that we probably have 25–30 people coming to the twice-a-month screening meetings. So, it's hard to get up in the morning here in the United States and not have some interest in digital health.
Last
great.
question.
We have time for one more question.
I'll start with a question for you, Don. Since you talked about mental health as one of the interesting areas to look at, which is clearly a big data problem. Probably there are a lot of issues that go into solving that type of, or addressing or putting together a solution for that. But then how do you get if you're a digital health startup, you're a big data startup, and you want to address that space, and we also talked about having the data to back up to show that you have something useful. How does a startup go about getting that? Is that just through the introductions through VC, or is there a better way for a startup to go about doing that?
So you're asking about introductions for how you're going to collect the data?
Correct, because you have to prove that you have something useful.
To raise money.
Yeah.
But you're a startup, you don't have that data.
Yeah, so
it's sort of a chicken and egg problem.
It really depends upon what the startup exactly is doing. So in one case I saw was a peer-to-peer support with text messaging that really was outside of the healthcare system. So that was something where there was an audience that was built on their own. I've seen other companies that will do pilots, and pilots are a whole nother subject, but will engage and do pilots with one of the healthcare systems. Or they may have, in some cases, may even just work with to get some basic proof of concepts, may work with a small local clinic. So it's really a matter of what really the startup is attacking and what data it is that they need to show effectiveness.
I would add to that, and just kind of being that we're in Silicon Valley, there are so many resources for entrepreneurs nowadays that I think didn't used to exist. So, I work at Illumina Accelerator, but there's a lot of other sort of seed stage or sort of resources to help entrepreneurs get off the ground. There's groups like Rock Health, like Athena Health. There's a number of accelerators in this field, like Illumina Accelerator, that are trying to empower entrepreneurs. So that's what we do all day long at Illumina Accelerators, help these companies generate data, help them make key introductions to partners, to investors, to help them refine their business model. There's a lot of folks out there that are trying to support the innovation ecosystem. So I think we're in a pretty good place to be. Now, it doesn't mean that it's easy, but it does take a village to create a startup, and I think there's a lot of folks who are trying to kind of boost that ecosystem. So that's definitely something to take advantage of, is to connect with the folks who are in that world that want to help entrepreneurs get off the ground.
That's encouraging. Thanks so much to our panelists for sharing their knowledge and wisdom today with us.
Thank you.
And seems way to go to make digital health a paradigm shift.